Welcome to Same Day, Different Century. I'm Zach. Today is June 21st. It's the summer of 1788. The United States of America is, technically, already a country, but it's a country without a real spine. The Articles of Confederation that held the states together since 1781 are failing. There's no executive branch, no federal judiciary, no reliable mechanism for raising revenue. The Continental Congress can pass resolutions, but it cannot enforce them. It's a governing body that governs almost nothing. The states act like 13 separate nations that happen to share a coastline and a revolution. So a new document is created. It was drafted in Philadelphia between May and September of 1787, a constitutional convention that was officially called to fix the Articles, but quietly pivoted to scrapping them entirely. The result is a proposed constitution, a stronger federal government with a president, a bicameral Congress, and a federal judiciary, a real national framework. But here's the thing, it doesn't mean anything yet, not until enough states say yes. Article 7 of the proposed Constitution sets the threshold explicitly. Ratification by 9 of the 13 states is required for the document to go into effect. So far, 8 states have voted yes: Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, and South Carolina, making the Union one vote away from a new governing reality. All eyes are on New Hampshire, and the story of how New Hampshire got there is not a story of inevitable triumph. It is a story of political brinksmanship, genuine uncertainty, and a 10-vote margin that history almost swallowed whole. Let's go back to February of 1788. New Hampshire's ratifying convention convenes in Exeter. The Federalists, the pro-Constitution faction, walk in and immediately take stock of the room, and they don't like what they see. The Anti-Federalists appear to have enough votes to defeat ratification outright. So the Federalists make a calculated move. Rather than let the convention call a vote and lose, they push for adjournment. A strategic pause to go back to the districts, make the case to the public, and come back in a few months when the numbers look better. It works and the convention adjourns. But it's worth pausing here because the Anti-Federalist opposition in New Hampshire and everywhere was not simply obstruction. These were people with substantive concerns. Where was the Bill of Rights? The proposed Constitution created a dramatically more powerful central government, and there were no explicit protections for individual liberties written into its text. What about standing armies? What about federal taxation? What about the sovereignty of the states themselves? One of the most vocal opponents at the New Hampshire Convention was a lawyer named Joshua Atherton, and Atherton's objection was particularly pointed. He argued against ratification in part because of what the Constitution explicitly allowed, the continuation of the Atlantic slave trade for 20 more years under the document's compromise language. Atherton did not want New Hampshire to be complicit in that institution. He said so directly. The convention reconvenes on June 18, 1788, this time in Concord. 3 days of debate follow, and the political terrain has shifted since February in ways that matter. Massachusetts, the sixth state to ratify, had done so back in early February by the razor-thin margin of 187 to 168. But crucially, Massachusetts hadn't just voted yes. It had voted yes and attached a list of recommended amendments, things the state hoped Congress would address after ratification. This model became a template. It gave wavering delegates a path forward. You don't have to love every word of this document to ratify it. Vote yes, advocate for changes through the new system, trust the process. Don't make amendments a precondition, just sign on. That approach gave the Federalists a rhetorical lifeline. And in New Hampshire, they had a powerful advocate in John Langdon. Langdon was one of New Hampshire's own delegates to the original Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. A wealthy merchant and one of the most prominent political figures in the state, he had helped shape the document and believed in it. He worked the room in Concord. He pressed his case. He brought every ounce of his influence to bear. On June 21, 1788, the vote was called. 57 in favor, 47 against. In a convention of 104 voting delegates, the Constitution cleared New Hampshire by 10 votes. And with that, it was done. The 9th state threshold had been met. Now here's where history gets complicated in the way that it always does when you look too closely. New Hampshire was the 9th state. but it was not the most powerful state. Virginia and New York, two of the largest, most economically significant states in the new nation, had not yet ratified, and there was a legitimate, serious argument that without them, the new government would be hamstrung from the start. Virginia was the most populous state in the Union. New York controlled a critical commercial corridor. A United States of America without Virginia and New York was, in a practical sense, an incomplete one. Virginia's ratifying convention, it turns out, was meeting at the same time as New Hampshire's. The news of New Hampshire's ratification, traveling by express rider and postal networks, the fastest communications available in 1788, reached Virginia on June 28th, 3 days after Virginia delegates had already voted to ratify the Constitution, believing that they were casting the deciding votes as the pivotal ninth state. The margin in Virginia was 89 to 79. New York followed on July 26th with an even closer margin of 30 to 27. But here's what matters most about June 21st specifically. When those 57 delegates in Concord raised their hands, they had no guarantee that Virginia was coming. They had no guarantee that New York would follow. They were operating in the informational fog of an 18th century republic, with incomplete knowledge of what was happening in other states, unable to coordinate in real time, and genuinely uncertain whether this fragile consensus would hold. The government formed under the Constitution convened for the first time in March of 1789. George Washington was inaugurated as the first president on April 30th. The Bill of Rights, 10 amendments that addressed many of the exact concerns the Anti-Federalists had raised in convention halls from Massachusetts to North Carolina, was ratified in 1791. Joshua Atherton's deeper objection about the slave trade was not resolved in 1788. That wound ran far beneath what any ratification vote could touch, and it would not be addressed for another 77 years, and not without the bloodiest war in American history. But the framework held. The United States Constitution, ratified by the required 9 states as of June 21, 1788, has been continuously in force ever since, making it the oldest active codified national constitution still in operation in the world today. Every law passed by Congress, every ruling handed down by the Supreme Court, every amendment added, every president inaugurated, all of it flows in an unbroken legal line from the moment a convention in Concord voted 57 to 47. 10 votes, and a country found its spine. That same day, different century. I'm Zach. We'll be back tomorrow with another date, another story. Thanks for listening.